Good morning, everybody. Welcome on this warm day. It's already 79 degrees outside. We can expect temperatures anywhere from 100 to 105, so please try to stay cool. Again, my name is David Antilles, and this is the BYOD webinar talking about BYOD, mobility and security. I am the Network Services Director here at Maron Structured Technologies, and I am here to basically give you a visual, if you will, on the trends, on what we've seen, where we're headed, and how to best deal with the BYOD question that's facing a lot of people today. So let's get started, shall we? So mobility goes boom. Now, a while back, I did a webinar on mobility security, and we kind of talked about some of the same things. However, the BYOD tag had not yet been created, and therefore it wasn't really top of mind. Now, we fast forward a few years, and we discuss the BYOD nomenclature and what does it mean. So let's start by looking back at what we did a few years ago. Sales of laptops overtook desktops in 2007, according to Frost and Sullivan. And analyst firms like iSupply and IDC at that time concurred that tablets will dominate the PC market going forward. IDC expected that portable PCs would account for 70% of the market by 2012, and Gartner also predicted that the mobile PCs will have 70% share of the market by 2012. Little did they know that it was going to grow much, much faster than that. And the popularity and the consumerization of these products brought it to a head. So now PC World in 2010 declared the year of the tablet for the tablet computer. The iPad debuted then, and it changed the market pretty much drastically. It allowed a lot of the same functions and features that you would not necessarily find on a laptop or a desktop, and made it even more easily to carry around, made your applications much more robust and portable, made everything a little bit simpler. But on top of that, it also introduced a whole new paradigm of home-based devices coming into the environment, to the corporate environment, be it a healthcare environment, financial environment, educational. It presented a lot of new obstacles that we need to get past. We look at today now, and Forrester Research is predicting that the number of tablets in the U.S. alone will grow from 10 million to 82 million by 2015. So we're already at 10 million, and we're going to 82 million in 2015. That is a large increase. That is an exponential increase in the usage. And not only that, you couple that with the applications, the bandwidth required, and then the security requirements bundled around those, and you can see the need of where the shift needs to happen. You have to start looking at a bunch of different things before you start doing the BYOD initiative in full force. Of course, Forrester also estimated that at least half of the 15 million Apple iPads are being used in business settings. And again, I kind of reiterated that ad nauseum. And it's going to continue to be reiterated. This will be the common theme of this webinar, is that these devices are consumer devices, primarily based for consumer devices, but have found their way into the enterprise. Most tablets and nearly half of all smartphones are now dual mode. That's the other thing. Before it was just Wi-Fi. Now they have cellular capabilities, 4G, 3G, and of course it makes it a whole lot easier, and it splits the context between the device. So now not only do you have the ability to traverse within an environment on a local Wi-Fi, but now you're also traversing over public domain on cellular carrier traffic. So what does that kind of mean? So we look at security as a whole. So cybersecurity trends, motivated and sophisticated. You don't have to go back very much to read in the tabloids or in the papers or in the, on the internet what's going on with security, and more specifically what's going on with motivated enterprises and organizations. The most innovative attacks often originated from intelligent and clandestine non-governmental organizations, again, whose interest is further to political agenda and cause. So basically you have some well-funded individuals with some very nefarious ideas looking to cause some major damage or steal some data, not because it benefits them or they want to post their name out on the internet saying, look at what I did. There's financial gain. So these organizations are going out, they're seeking the best and the brightest of our young security and hacking community and pulling them into their fold, paying them great gobs of money, and then telling them, go get me some data. And a lot of that data used to reside specifically on laptops and desktops, non-mobile devices. Now their attack vector has grown. Now they have the ability to go out and seek and grab wherever they can, wherever there's an opening. So during the second quarter of 2010, botnets controlled almost 2.2 million computers in the U.S., representing 5.2% of every 1,000 PCs. That's from Microsoft. Now they should know because they get hacked quite a lot, unfortunately. They just happen to be the biggest fish in the pond, so they happen to have the biggest target on them. So what do we do to try to mitigate things? So we have to start looking at the items and the means and transits of that these portable devices have as a means to jump onto the internet. So again, we're talking about one web with many uses, web-based applications that have changed the dynamics of security. Now, given the reliance of web applications, virtually all of the traffic is HTTP based. So whether it's an app, it doesn't matter if it's financial or healthcare or what have you, they're still using the same ports, and it makes it difficult for any type of software or hardware, for that matter, sitting on a perimeter to distinguish the difference between the payload. It's just difficult because it's coming in all on the same port. So again, that very same advantage that web applications have is the exact same vulnerability that these people are trying to take advantage of, and it really means a shift in how you approach security as a whole versus when you had a static desktop or a laptop. It's not that that easy. Well, we're going to put a firewall or antivirus on the laptop, and we have our firewalls on the outside. Now you have devices ebbing and flowing, and not only that, they're accessing two different mediums at the same time, to get data. One may be accessing a corporate application, while at the same time someone else is accessing Facebook, through the same device. You couple that with virtualization, so now you've added a whole new spectrum and ideal within the environment. Virtualization doesn't run north-south, it runs east-west. So your traditional hardware platforms, IDP platforms, and so forth, they only have the ability to look on the outside of those platforms and not necessarily see what's going on the inside. So whereas the traffic used to have to traverse multiple zones in order to get its data and come back, where it can be viewed and inspected, now it doesn't have to. It just travels within the same box sideways, laterally. No visibility. That increases that attack vector even more so. So the battlefield changes. As targets become more decentralized, security teams face a host of critical challenges. Again, you're facing limited resources and exploding complexity. Do more with less. That has been the mantra for the last 7 to 8 years, maybe more so going back 10 years. Do more with less IT staff, but more complexity, because now we've introduced virtualization, cloud computing, we have applications, we have Citrix, we have VMware, we have Hyper-V, we have a lot of different apps. We have for healthcare, you have nurse call systems. For financials, you have on-demand applications, for brokerage. These are things that need immediate access, but they can reside just about everywhere, and they're on demand. And how do you tackle that with a limited set of resources? You're either fighting the fires that are in front of you from a help desk perspective, or you're fighting the fires on the back end side where you're trying to fix a router or a switch or firewall or what have you. Diverse user profiles and policies. So now you've got all these different pieces. And maybe your acceptable usage policy or your corporate usage policy or your device issuance policy was written maybe 10, 15 years ago or even 5 years ago. And now you're faced with a bunch of brand new things coming on board to the environment. And how do you manage that? You have to look at the policy from the top down, and we'll dig into that a little deeper later on in this webinar. Device and OS proliferation. Here's a real big gotcha. So you have Apple, iOS, then you have Android, you have Windows, and you have et cetera. Not only that, you also have your Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows XP, Unix, Red Hat, whatever flavor that you might like, and it makes it really difficult to try to create a policy-based standard, or standards-based policy wrapped around those, other than physical connectivity. How do you manage that? You have to again look at what's coming in and identify the devices that you're willing to allow into your infrastructure. I know it could be a difficult thing to target because everybody wants everything at the same time. But again, how do you eat an elephant? In small chunks. You have to take pieces at a time and be able to digest it to understand what exactly is actually going to happen. Sometimes it's like drinking through a fire hose. I agree. It's hard. I've been there, and I've sat through the conversations of, well, everybody else wants to jump on this, and then we have this group that this business unit that needs to have these services turned on, and this business unit has to have these services turned on. Oh, and by the way, when? Now. It's a difficult propaganda to engage in, but you have to prioritize which of these groups, which of these application services are really required to the enterprise, and what the net effect is going to be overall. And then we get to the inadequate security on mobile devices. We'll touch that, and we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Another nugget here. Between 2009 and 2010, there was a reported increase in mobile device threats of 250%. I can guarantee you that number has gone up. As the threat vector increases from the amount of devices being proliferated, let's not forget all of the devices that have come offline that were Apple, were iPhones and iPhone touches, and older devices that were pushed down and handed down and now are being propagated across. One of the things that a lot of people don't really realize or think about is leakage. And I'm not talking about data leakage, I'm talking about signal leakage. So if you do have a business or you do have an organization with many access points, it's sort of similar to what happened back in the late 90s with war driving, people driving around, pointing their little Pringles cannons all over the place, picking out signals. It's much the same way today. People walk down the block, and it's not unheard of them jumping onto your environment. Now, if it's secured, it shouldn't have too much of a problem. However, if it's unsecured, then you might be running into an issue. And then think about it. If it's unsecured too, these are the same corporate devices too that are going out there and sitting at a Panera and grabbing something, and then coming back to the organization and logging back onto the network maybe using their device. So the game changers. So this is a large university with 50,000 students, multiple devices per student. Obviously, if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or what have you, or some other form of tablet, these things, any individual carry one to three devices per. So we look at the trend from 10. Traffic was about 40,000, usage. Then you get back, you go over to summer break, just as things were issued. You have that lull, so your network is not being hit. But then you come the fall, and this is the same thing after the holidays, after Christmas break or the holiday break. It's the same thing. You go through this nobody really has these devices yet. All of a sudden they go away and they come back, and now you've seen this big spike. Where did all these devices come? Are they allowed on the environment? You have to take a look at that. And if it's an open platform, what are they overrunning your network with? iPhones and iTablets and Blackberries and what have you. They all have their means, and they all have their their wants and their gives from an application standpoint. However, not all of them secure everything in the same fashion. So it's like a moving target. That makes the task of a daily management of these devices even more difficult from a security perspective. So the new environment is driven by the user experience. One, can they use it? Can they adopt it? Will they like it? Is it going to interfere with what they do today? That's something that needs to be discussed up front. Then you couple that with the economics. What's it going to cost me to obtain technology to help secure my environment or to manage these devices? What are all of the different components required? Is it going to affect the overall user experience? That too affects the economics, because now on the back end, now you're having to pay for additional staff for help desk tickets. All these are issues if it's not well planned for. If it's planned for and mitigated for, you have a very good chance of deploying one of these scenarios effectively, cohesively with your staff, and to the non-detriment of your user base. Wireless device proliferation. Lots of devices out there. They use rich applications. The network is complex, and you need consistent security. So you look at the user types and their requirements for a guest. So if you're a hospital, or if you're healthcare, or maybe you're just a business and you're hosting individuals within your business, and they need access, open access. So you would like to streamline the process with self-provisioning, open, no encryption, a captive portal, if you will. Simple experience. That way, when they come back, they're not always hitting you up for, hey, what's the password? Or, hey, can somebody help me get onto this environment? Device-aware policy, something that's going to help watch the back end of that device in case that device goes out and goes somewhere where it shouldn't and comes back with a payload that shouldn't be jumping on the environment. And differentiated access. You want to be able to say, okay, this is a vendor of mine. He's a trusted individual. Here, this is just a standard guest. Somebody who walked in the door, just happens to, I don't know them from Adam. Just somebody who needs access, and they're visiting a patient or whatnot. We take a look at the BYOD world, the employee-owned world. Here's the big one. Self-provisioning. You want people to be able to jump on and single sign-on, that user experience that everybody has come to know and love, with a secure certificate-based authentication as a possibility. User app device aware policies. Device management, very critical. On-device security. Device loss prevention. That is a very big nightmare for most IT shops. What do you do when the device gets lost? And secure network and cloud access. Again, you're looking at virtualization and cloud access, and you're adding another couple threat vectors there as well. And then you have your standard corporate issued devices. These are self-provisioning. They have the standard username and password that's been that you get to pick and choose. Secure certificate-based authentication if they got a backend cert authentication server. Again, user app, on-device security, etc. Those are the standard flair. Those are the standard items that are expected. But all of those and more so are now being pushed up to the other two items, the guest services and the employee-owned devices. And how do you manage that? Corporate-owned devices are simple. They're not, they're provisioned by the organization. They're given by the organization. There's not much change within those devices. Employee-owned devices, they get updated. Their OS gets updated every quarter or half quarter or what have you. Applications get updated all the time. Guest services, you have no idea what's going on there. It's just you don't know what device they're coming in with. You just happen to know that they have one. So you start taking steps. So what should you be doing? You want to provide a secure device agnostic connection anywhere. You want to build one general purpose application and agnostic network. And assume the primary means of connection is wireless. So you review. You have to begin by taking a good look and policy review of your acceptable usage policy, corporate, personal, etc. We're going to dig a little deeper into this. Next slide down. Organizational impact. What does it mean to the organization to allow all these devices on there, and what's it going to mean from putting in additional means and measures to help secure those? The legalities. Who owns this data? Okay, so now you're allowing this device, this BYOD device, to come in on off the street and attach itself to the environment, gather corporate resources, but at the same time, if they were to lose this phone, there are both corporate resources and personal resources on that phone. Who owns that? Who has the ability? That is where the policy comes in. That needs to be set up front, needs to be well aware as to what your intentions are in the event of a phone loss or theft. Mobile device management. You're going to hear this term a lot as well, besides BYOD. And in many instances, a lot of people believe that BYOD means mobile device management solely. It can't be further from the truth. It happens to be one of the main components of BYOD. However, it is just that, a simple component. Mobile device management. It is nice to know where my device is, what my device is provisioned with, what applications sit on it, and what they're putting on it from a personal or corporate stance, document-wise, picture-wise, so forth, etc. However, that does not cover the back-end security measure where this phone is a moving target and its applications that it's downloading may or may not have a malicious payload. How do you manage that? You have to include mobile security into that discussion, because if you don't, you're only doing yourself a disservice by only employing half of what should be otherwise a fully rounded mobile security, mobile device management governed by policy initiative. So the 800-pound gorilla in the room. The management must drive these initiatives. If management doesn't drive, and by management I'm talking about all the way from the top down, if it is not pushed down and then sideways to all of the business units, there will be difficulty in acceptance. Acceptance for usage, acceptance in the policy, and acceptance in what the user experience is going to be like. Information security policy. When is the last time you visited your information security policy and did a complete review of it? Do you understand when it was written and what it was written for? Information classification policy. What class of service, what class of application, what class of access is allowable? Those are also items that you need to take a look at, because I'm pretty sure that mobile device utilization wasn't a factor 10 years ago or even a consideration if that was the last time you took a look at your classification policy. Now, your user base acceptable use policy. How is it that the user base is going to actually go ahead and take these devices and bring them on board? This is where the nuts and bolts of this whole discussion on BYOD needs to happen. Because it's okay that you talk about your information security policy and you make your efforts and your strides to tighten that up, and it's okay that you talk about your means and methods and ways of classifying what data is transferred. However, if you don't know how the device is going to be used and when it's going to be used, and if the end user doesn't know what's going to happen if the event of a disaster, the phone gets lost, they leave it in a cab, or they drop it somewhere, it gets stolen, then you're going to have a real difficult time protecting yourself from intellectual property stance, and two, from somebody accessing that device from a remote location that you don't already know has been stolen. Data retention policy. How long do you keep that data on your system? A lot of these mobile device management features are, we'll pull your information and we'll keep a copy. How long are you going to keep that? It no longer does it just relate to data sitting on your laptop or on your disk or on your email drive or on the drives on your SAN. Now you're talking about information that's coming off a mobile device, and now how long do you hold it? Your data protection policy, data loss prevention. How do you mitigate that? What are your steps for mitigating data loss? Again, that is a discussion that gets rolled up into the acceptable usage policy, because that needs to be known. So think of the acceptable usage policy as a linchpin holding together the info security policy, the classification policy, the retention, the protection, and then now your risk assessment policy. You have to be willing to take a look at your risk and understanding what the potential caveats and risks are in allowing all of these devices, not just from a traditional security standpoint, but also from a risk. What are my gaps? What does the analysis show? Where do we need to tighten? Is it password? Is it user? Is it device, etc.? Again, can't say enough. Management must drive. So making it all work. How do all these components come together? I would first like to say that when it comes to putting together a mobile device and security feature set together, it doesn't necessarily all have to come from one side. However, to make ease of transition and make it easier and simplifying the environment, which is what we intend to do here, because certainly what we don't want to do is introduce, one, is additional complexity, and two, is additional cost because of the complexity. So by simplifying the environment, that's one of the means of being able to also simplify the introduction of BYOD into your environment. So fewer wires. We talk here about Juniper-based hardware. Now, here at Maron Structured Technologies, we are a Juniper Elite partner, and by being an elite partner, we have been able to see a lot of the different environments that are deploying BYOD today, and we see Juniper's version of and solution set of what BYOD means. And quite frankly, they bring together a very simple, very strong, compelling story, one from a cost perspective and two from a deployment perspective that makes sense. It's not overselling, it's right size provisioning of these devices. But given in the context of this discussion today, these are the components that make these types of security initiatives work when it comes to BYOD. So what we're going to talk to is not necessarily hardware-centric, but more or less component-centric. So fewer wires. So you need a device that is capable of handling .1x, that is cost-effective, has fewer devices to manage. So obviously everyone has a switch, so you have a switch. Then you have your secure and scalable mobility, access points. You take a look at your access point solution set. How does it manage access to the environment via wireless? Can you tune? Can you get granular with the security? How does it integrate both to the switches and to the security side of things? You talk about a client. Now let's get real here. A lot, some talk about, well, we'll do a proxy for you. We'll do filters. If you don't have something sitting on that phone and it's looking at your traffic data from the outside looking in, quite frankly, you're not going to have the ability to be as flexible and be able to react as quickly as you necessarily would by having a single client, one that governs security and access, enforces the policy, and then supports all major devices. And then here's the cornerstone, your comprehensive security. A firewall with IDP or IDS, industry-leading scale, something that can scale from small to large. Not all sizes, not all enterprises are the same size. Some of them span from being just a branch to all the way being to the large enterprise, thousands and thousands of access points. These are the main components. You have to have something that will allow the connectivity back to, that can be your authenticator. You have something that actually provisions the wireless out there and puts the signal out there. Then you have something that actually sits on the phone that manages, watches, and secures. And it all gets together and it's driven by that policy that's pushed down from management onto your security platforms, which help regulate and govern what's going on with these mobile devices. Mobility is much more than BYOD, and that has never been truer than today. In the past, we had our niche devices. We had symbol devices. If you're a warehouse, you have your dolphin type keypads and so forth. Nowadays, we actually have true mobility, and we have true computing power in these little form factors that walk around with us day to day. You have your guest devices, your employee-owned devices, and your corporate-owned devices, all of which are similar, very much similar in the way in what they do today. However, they're all used very much differently than what you would want them to use them on a day-to-day basis. So let's look at an example from a healthcare perspective. So let's look at this use case for guests. So you have guests on a corporate environment, visiting a patient. They're wanting to talk to the internet. They want to get out there. So they log into the hospital guest and they hit the wireless access point. The firewall makes a decision. Bingo, you're on. you're able to get access to that. Now, we take that a step further. You're trying to access some information that they shouldn't be accessing, and this hospital is keeping bandwidth for what matters most. So they throttle it down. Again, the policy is governed and pushed down by the UAC Pulse mobile security policy device. So we have a wireless user. Unknown device connects to open captive portal, shoots it up to the wireless controller. User session is captured and then redirected to the wireless controller, which has a smart pass on there. User selects smart pass self-registration and creates a temporary user credential. Smart pass identifies it, sends a SMS message to the phone. Wireless device gets the device, provisions the password. User uses the temporary password given to them to authenticate, and now the user is connected. It's a simple, easy platform for them to use. One, it doesn't require them to call or go to the kiosk and ask for help, and two, it allows the access that they should be using and not jumping on board with a mobile device onto the actual corporate environment. So we take a look at the employee-owned device use case. So you have an individual with a smart tablet. So they go to log in. Sorry, my mouse went a little bananas there. They go to log in. They apply their credentials. As you see on the right, it hits the wireless. It goes to the wireless controller. Then it hits the provisioning server. Now they're connecting to the secure hospital network, and now they're onto their EMR system. It's returned. You're on. The device has made the decision. Now they try to go to Facebook. The next step is it hits the wireless controller, goes to look up the policy, and restricted. You cannot get onto the environment. You trying to access Facebook or what have you. Those are the policies that you can enforce, obviously, in this particular use case. So let's take a look at the step-by-step process in which it took. Device authenticated in a wireless network, comes across to the AP. DHCP server SmartPack communicates user IP to LDAP, UAC, IFMAP, captive portal, what have you. UAC pushes role-based ACL to the firewall policies and to the firewalls, to the switches, and to the SRX. Decision point is made. The SRX is your enforcer at this point. Policies are allowing the user basic access to all servers except finance. So rules to access X, Y, Z, and not A. Secure SRX policies block non-network related applications like Hulu, Netflix, or what have you, whatever you determined to be deemed unacceptable usage on the corporate environment. And then you could take it a step further by including the monitoring feature such as a SIEM device, such in this case as Storm, where it collects the information from the SRX and from the MAG device. All right, here's a big question. So you're at the movies or in a taxi cab, and then you put your phone down or you put your tablet down, and then you step away. You go to pay, and then you put your device down and you walk away. Half hour goes by, 15 minutes go by, then you notice, oh my goodness, my phone, I've left it somewhere. The tablet, I've left it somewhere. Or maybe somebody walked by and it was in your bag, and somebody happened to, very sneakily just take it out of your bag. What then? So your device is now being looked at by somebody. They're trying to connect. They don't have the appropriate credentials. They try to connect. Wireless LAN controller realizes, wait, this guy has failed his user authentication one too many times, or this device was reported as stolen. Guess what? It starts wiping the pad. Information is gone. Now that pad is no more useless, is still useful to them. However, the device and information, the device stored information is gone. So now your data loss prevention kicks in. You don't have the critical keys to the kingdom, so you will, intellectual property. All of that appropriate information is gone. But here's where that legality question comes into. So now you've wiped everything out. Now your user is going to say, well, what about my pictures? Well, if you happen to keep a copy of those pictures on your environment, then you can return those pictures to the user. However, that needs to be communicated up front. Otherwise, there might be some hurt feelings at the end. So we look at Juniper's mobility solution. Now this is a solution that I've implemented myself and is very, very capable, very, very strong. It is very compelling, I said. It makes sense from a very, very top, high-level approach to securing your environment because it addresses a lot of the different spectrums and the different threat vectors that not all MDM applications have the ability to, because they're only point products or looking specifically at an application or specifically at a component on the phone. So you want to secure your users and devices to support your BYOD. So the Juniper advantage is that mobile device security and management, extensive client support. Supports Juno supports iPad. It supports many of the different devices, Android, Windows, etc. Secure connectivity, ubiquitous access, employee remote access. Again, we have the MAG series from Juniper, and it runs Juno's single train of code that Juniper is widely known for. Application visibility, this is where your firewalls come in. Firewall with integrated AppSecure and IPS. Now AppSecure is the application side of the house. It watches the application, it profiles the application. Think of it as an IDP specifically for your application, more or less an ALG on steroids. Context-based AAA, warranted access, enterprise data protection. So you want to know who's on your environment, when they're on the environment, and what's on the environment. And then you want to take that information and be able to pull it back and assign roles and responsibilities against those credentials. That is where you have a UAC-based, so a unified access control platform. And I have to say, UAC has come a very long way from the NAC of yore. So back then, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when NAC was just coming up and becoming a buzzword and finally started to be implemented, it wasn't necessarily everything everybody wanted it to be because it was cumbersome, it didn't always address all of the issues, and in many cases it became something that just hindered progress as opposed to applying progress. So what ended up happening, they applied it to their least complaining constituents, and that would be the guest realm. That is where NAC I've seen used a lot, is in the guest realm. We're going to apply it so that when they access, they can go out and here's their captive portal, boom, they're gone. However, nowadays UAC has grown up, is no longer a teenager, it's now a full-grown adult, and Juniper has done a wonderful job with mirroring a lot of the different features and functionality of NAC features gone wrong from 3 years ago to now. And it integrates very seamlessly with SRX and EX hardware platforms. Clientless provisioning. Now, I'm pretty sure you will agree if hands-off is something that you'd like to do or have and maintain within your user base as far as guest services are concerned, then clientless provisioning is great. But also, when you have a wide-ranging deployment and you don't want to have to continuously hit the machine, this is a very big benefit because it lowers your overall cost from a deployment standpoint because you don't have to hit and touch everything all at once or in phases. So clientless provisioning, device fingerprinting with wireless LAN controller, and the device management with Ringmaster Smart Pass. So this is where the wireless controller comes in. It has a portal, captive portal, able to redirect, do some HTTP redirects or FTP redirects within the device itself, or point it to the firewall for decision point making based on the policies that were provided by the UAC as the authentication credential manager. And overall, this is the overall holistic Juniper solution. It's all in one, it integrates well, but you can start in different components. You don't have to go full tilt boogie and say, okay, understanding what components have what features will help you understand where you need to start and at what levels you need to start at. So when we talk about the Juniper solution, it is an integrated architecture. It takes your seamless connectivity and your manageability, and it marries it together to develop a consistent security deployment. And that, I can't tell you, is heads above everything else when you're talking about deployments. You want it to be consistent across all facets, specifically with your users, both at the entry level all the way up to your power users. If it isn't easy to use, it's not going to be easily adopted. If it's going to be cumbersome for one particular business unit, they may want to scrap it, and then you may have to begin with looking at something else. Again, with a very complete policy review and understanding what your architecture is like, and you apply these across the top and overlay to establish what your requirements are, and then you're able to develop this centralized with single sign-on, flexible, value-added with end-to-end encryption solution. It is a integrated architecture, and I won't tell you it's a one-size-fits-all, because no vendor can tell you and sit there and say this is one-size-fits-all. This is guaranteed to make it work. There are headaches that go along with this, but if you're willing to put in the work up front, just about any architecture will work, so long as you're able to identify and be able to ask yourself the critical questions, and the critical questions of your business units of what is actually necessary versus what is actually wanted. I need is different versus I want. I need is this is a critical component. It needs to happen. I want, these are my wants. So basically once the want is filled, you can move on to the next one. So those are key aspects of being able to develop this whole integrated architecture and being able to pinpoint what those security caveats are within your environment, specifically as it relates to BYOD. So Juniper Networks continue innovation. So what was announced in 2011? I'm just going to give you a brief back-end history lesson on what was talked about before. App Secure for the SRX, again, that's that application profiling software that resides on the SRX. Next Gen 802.11 NAP support, Junos Pulse Mobility Security Suite, that is already out. I welcome you to go out, if you have an iPhone, if you have an Android device, go out to your local application store. It's a free download. Go ahead and pull down a Junos Pulse client and take a look at it. Unless you have an SSL VPN from Juniper or a MAG, it won't necessarily do a whole lot, but you can get the feel and the flavor for what it's capable of doing, both from a back end and from a device loading perspective. And expanded Juniper Pulse OS support were announced in 2011. Where they're moving now, App Secure for Branch SRX. So now it was available for the big guys. Now we're going to the smaller guys. So now even the smaller firewalls can help protect even the smallest environments. SRX 550 introduction. It's a mid-tier platform that fits in between the 650 and the 240. It's a cast. So it allows for more flexibility when you don't need to go from necessarily all the way from a 1 gig all the way to a full-blown PIN solution. Here's your midpoint. IFMAP, WLC, being able to share licenses across, pull that critical information across and be able to share policies across the environment. That, again, simplifies deployments. Not having to create multiple policies for everybody if you don't require it. Not having to require specific subsets and then subsets and subsets. And that's where it gets complicated. XYZ needs this, XYZ needs that. If you have a single consistent security policy in place, this is how you can leverage that. Smart Pass Connect, being able to self-provision your environment is a very key aspect. Junos Pulse enhancements, SRX 550 and SRX 110, and the wireless access point 321 and 322, which provide MIMO 3x3 radios for 802.1xn. So this is the key that Juniper has been driving forever. They do it now with their 321 architecture, where we're collapsing the environment and the LAN architecture to a single node with the Q fabric. bringing the data center and collapsing it into a one layer as opposed to 3 layers where your conventional is core, access, and distribution or aggregation. Now it's 1. And we're continuing that process with the security. One policy for all. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's a policy that helps drive the requirements to be able to deploy a solution such as BYOD. One management, single pane of glass, being able to see everything from one perspective and manage everything from one perspective, and not having to have multiple tools to look at all the different things that are out there. Being able to govern and make changes from one device and the one network. That's what I was just talking about. Being able to collapse everything into one single, not flat. By flat I mean one single platform as opposed to having access, core, and aggregation. And you bring it all together, and that's the direction that Juniper is heading into. That concludes today's webinar on BYOD. If I could leave you with anything, is that BYOD is out there today, and it is out there today because your user base demands it. Doctors, physicians, clinicians, financials, everyone in between, they see the power that the device on. We are a on-demand device now people. We need to have that instant gratification and know that we can get on the device, get on the information as quickly as possible. It has never been more present than today, where everyone has a phone and everybody's staring at it. I can't remember the last time where I haven't walked down the street and bumped into somebody because either my head was looking down or they were looking down. We're on demand now. It's easy to get to the information. How we secure it, it's up to us to go out and make and do our due diligence in securing our environments, understanding what those requirements are, and then laying that foundation for today going forward. Yesterday going to today has gone and by. Those policies will no longer hold water, especially given the amount of and proliferation of all these devices. It's just going to be too difficult. It's going to be too much of a moving target. Can't wait to see what happens in the next 20 years as technology grows. But from what I can tell you, the future is now, and with these mobile devices, it's never been more present than ever. So if you have any questions, please throw them out there. If not, please visit us on our websites at structure-tech.com, or visit me on Twitter or on YouTube, where I have some info tips. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Everyone have a great day. Stay cool. Thank you.